Yes, lads, what's going on? And welcome to Season 4, Episode 3 of The Running Irishman. In this episode, we are joined by Paul Robinson. Before we get into talking about Paul and everything to do with this episode, I do want to apologise. This episode was meant to go out last Thursday, but obviously I'm in 6th year now, and kind of school and life just kind of got in the way of that. It came Wednesday night, and I was like, oh, crap, I don't have the podcast ready to go out on Thursday. And I said, you know what? I'll leave it. I was going to post it on Sunday, but then I thought it just felt like I was just throwing it out there, and this is a really great episode. So I feel like, it had the right to put this episode on the day that's usually supposed to. So I just wanted to quickly brush over that. As I mentioned, we do have Paul Robinson in this episode of the podcast. This podcast was meant to happen a while back, but obviously just like the episode last week, kind of life and competitions and running got in the way of that. And look, I was more than happy to have Paul on the podcast, a bit later in advance, because it was a really, really great episode. If you don't know who Paul Robinson is, Paul Robinson was one of the athletes in the incident with. Well, one of the athletes with the incident with Sean Tobin jumping across the line, in the All Ireland 1500 metre final, who then became the All Ireland 1500 metre champion. We also mentioned this with Sean Tobin in that episode of the podcast, if you want to go check that one out as well. Paul, along with being the previous 1500 metre All Ireland champion, he also has a 145 800 metre, a 335 1500, and a 354 mile. That mile gave him the under 20 Irish record, and also the 1500 meter under 23 Irish record. So he has a really, really great running resume. He's a really, really sound lad. He's also suffered with a lot of injuries in his time that's led to some inconsistencies in his running that we do dive into, so make sure to stick around for that. It's really relatable to me at the moment, and he did really give me a great insight on how to deal with and get over injuries. So I do really appreciate that. So without further ado, I hope you all enjoy this episode of the podcast with Paul Robinson, and roll the intro. Bye. Yes, lads, what is going on?
My name is Amy O'Donoghue.
People call me Dr. Josh.
My name's Lewis O'Loughlin.
My name is Isolde O'Donnell.
I'm Charlie O'Donovan.
I'm Abdullah Jill.
I'm Scott Fagan.
I'm Mark Conrad.
My name's Cormac Dalton.
I'm Paul Byrne.
I'm Michael Morgan.
More than a runner.
The Irish Hammer.
My name's Brennan.
I'm Brian Fay.
It's Dash Bar.
I am a triathlete.
Craig Engels.
Cheryl Nolan. Sean Donoghue. John Rankin.
I got 10th at the World Championships in 2019 in Doha.
I'm doing great. Just happy to be on the podcast.
I'm a Man United fan.
Let's get into this episode of the podcast. Yes, lads, so we are here with Paul Robinson. Paul, I do really appreciate you taking the time out to come on the podcast. I'm really, really looking forward to this. As usual, I'll let you take it away and give a little bit of an introduction about yourself.
Well, Killian, thanks for having me on. I know we were supposed to kind of do this at the start of the summer, but obviously just with the summer athletic season coming up, I was a bit busy, so I'm glad to be on the show now. I think it's always great to be seeing podcasts or media about our sport. And in fairness, listen, I love athletics, and I follow a lot of the podcasts and a lot of other podcasts. So it's great. Fair play to you. Appreciate you having me on.
No problem at all.
Yeah. So a bit about myself. I'm obviously I'm a 1500 meter runner. I'm 30 years of age now, so I've been on the scene for quite a while. I would have started athletics when I was maybe 4 or 5, and then probably took it really seriously when I obviously would have done all the underage, all that sort of stuff, but really would have took it really serious once I kind of just finished the junior ranks under 20, and when I started college, and then obviously I was lucky enough to kind of be able to kind of go professional pretty much early on in my career, and would have based myself in Australia and the United States and stuff like that, training with the Melbourne Track Club, and obviously kind of had would have had pretty good success for where I was at early on in my career, and then obviously just with the ruthlessness of the sport, just became kind of very injury prone. So kind of in my late 20s, I kind of spent just trying to get back on track, and then in fairness, although I didn't make the Olympics this year, I probably got back to some of the best run I had been doing in a long time. during the indoor season and kind of the summer before that when COVID hit. So I'm still just trying to kind of get back on the main circuit, and things go on, there'll be more competitions to go for, to aim for next year. So
Definitely.
as I was saying to you before the show, I'm just coming back from Achilles tendinopathy injury, which anyone who has Achilles problems know how tedious and just they're just a horrible injury to get over.
100%.
So I feel like I'm nearly out the end of that. So that's good, and I'm back doing a bit of training at the moment. But as I said to you, things are kind of fairly quiet on the competition front for me, and there's no real kind of stress to get back anytime quick. So I'm just focusing on rehab and focusing on cross train and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah,
perfect. Yeah, no, brilliant. So we'll kind of truck back a little bit, get back to kind of the start of your early days of running, because obviously you've had ups and downs with injuries, but overall your running career is nothing. It's kind of, it's nothing to shy away from in terms of the kind of races and the high caliber races that you've been in. So we're kind of just going to go back to kind of where it all started. So you were telling me before the show that you were doing running up to about 14, 15, and then you stopped and went back to soccer, and then you got back into it at 16. So kind of what was the thought process behind all of that?
Well, like I said, I would have. My dad was the local coach in the local athletics club here, so obviously running would have been a big part of my family. Like, my dad was mad into it. My brother was an All Ireland schools champion, so there would have been, running was pretty much a big sport in the household. But I would have done all sports. So up until about 14 or 15, I would have been running, playing swimming, playing soccer. They were kind of the four main things that I was doing. And then obviously I wanted to be, as I think a lot of young lads want to be, I wanted to be a professional footballer. That's what I wanted to do. And my cousin Cian Duffy actually went on to score a couple of goals in the Europa League, and my other cousin Mark Langtree was playing just breaking into the Shamrock Rovers senior team. So for me, looking at those guys, that's kind of what I wanted to do, and around that time I would have been playing for the other representative team in Dublin, the NDSL. So not the DDSL, it's the Breffner League. And we had a representative team that went down to the Kennedy Cup, which is a huge competition under 14 and under 15s, So that was the first time I solely went and concentrated on one sport. And obviously, listen, you're so young at that stage, and you probably put a lot of pressure on yourself. And when you're not maybe getting these trials that you're, to go to England or anything like that, I just kind of probably think at the time I was fairly big for my age when I was very young, and then I probably didn't take a growth spurt until I was about 17, 18 again. So around that time when I was 14 and 15, I was playing kind of centre mid, and things just weren't going my way. And then you kind of find yourself kind of drifting out with teams and sitting on the sidelines a lot, which to me I couldn't handle. I didn't want to be doing any of that, especially when you're 14, 15. You want to just be playing.
100%.
So then. It's like, listen, I'm just going to go back running again. I just couldn't handle not being able to. At least with running, I was like, I'm always going to get a chance to race. Like,
definitely.
No one can tell you not to run.
Yeah.
And then that year, I think, so that was, I would have stopped at about 15, 16 with the football, and then I just went and I think I won some indoor All Ireland when I was 16, and then just didn't look back since then. And just loved it. Just fell in love with just how. You're solely responsible nearly for your own performance. No one can control what you're trying to do. That was kind of what hooked me. What I felt like, what I got into the sport, or what I put in and the training and everything that I put in, I would always be able to be accountable for my own performance. So I kind of love that,
Yeah, 100%. And as you said there, like within running, there's, obviously you have to qualify for kind of the big caliber races, but during the course of the year, you'll always get races in, and there will never be someone to tell you that you can't race. And obviously what you put in, you'll get out, as you mentioned. And
I think it's easier to accept as well. Like you said, you like, if you don't qualify a race, at least you can just say, I wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Whereas
100%.
like, at least in football and stuff like that, it all comes down to just what the manager's opinion or people's opinion. At the end of the day, it's all opinion on who they think is good.
Definitely.
So yeah.
you could be the star player on a team and everyone else around you isn't pulling their weight, so you don't get where you want to be. But obviously in running there is sort of a team element, especially when it comes to cross country season. But it predominantly, you're doing it for yourself in a sense, and you'll always get something out of it with your team or individually if you're putting the work in. So in terms of putting in the work at a young age, and start taking running seriously, when was that moment where you're kind of like, right, I'm actually, pretty good at this and I could, actually do something with this?
Yeah, so like, looking back on it now, like I never really knew about like obviously the All Ireland schools was a huge thing when you're in school, and pretty much just the cross country. Like you said, we would have had a great kind of team, underage team, so we would have won, I think at least 5 club cross country championships in my club for my team. So there was a great camaraderie there and stuff like that, but I never really took it really seriously. Like I would have never known what my times were or like who was good or anything like that until I kind of won my first All Ireland, and then I kind of started realizing, okay, what's a good time. But I qualified for the European Junior Championships in 2009. And that was the first year that I started like trying to run standards.
Yeah.
So before that, like I was never really, there's no need to try hit a time because you can't qualify. There's no like under 15 European Championships or whatever. I was kind of going. So when I got into my leaving cert year, that was when the European Juniors were on, and I think the standard at the time was 351, and that was like a big thing for me to try get this standard. And that's when I started like taking it really kind of serious and really kind of training that. And I kind of moved away from my dad as my coach when the year before that, and I was being coached by Rob Denmead, and he was brilliant. He coached Colin Costello to win the European Junior Championships in 2006. So we ended up having a great relationship then for the next probably 7 years, I think it was. And then from that point on, I ran 346 that year. I went to the European Junior Championships, and then the next year was the World Juniors. And I took a year. I finished my leaving cert, and I took a year out. I didn't go into college, and I went away and started trying to like train professionally. What I thought was at the time. Looking back now, it was gas, but like just applying myself was. I went up to like train in Font-Romeu, and then I started kind of getting into better races. And then when I made the World Junior final in 2010, that's when I kind of started my relationship with Nick Bideau being my agent, and I was able to kind of get into a lot better races and stuff like that. And then obviously when I went down to Australia in 2012 with David Campbell, who was also in my club, and he would have been a sub 4 minute miler and ran 145 for 800 meters, and went to the World Champs. So he put me in touch with the group down there, and we went down together. And when I went down there, I was training with the likes of Ryan Gregson, who was and who ran 331 when he was 20, and I was only 19, so I was going down. And he like that guy was the man back then, so he would have been the guys that everyone would have been following on Flow Track and stuff like this. He was absolutely phenomenal. So to go down there, it was just like, oh my god, and then obviously Collis Birmingham was there. 2-time Olympian, and then there's just loads of really good, proper professional runners down there that were just able to show me the ropes, how to apply yourself, just how to approach training and stuff like that. And I learned a lot really quick. And then my career kind of took off really in 2013 after I spent a year with them, and that's when I ran 335 when I think it was 22, ran 145 that year. And then the next year was the European Champs when I finished fourth. Yeah, so that was kind of the kind of breakthrough of how I kind of really started trying to take it serious and really try to establish myself as like a proper fully fledged professional runner.
Yeah, you mentioned like at the start of the episode where you mentioned when you were younger, you like most young boys' dreams to be a professional footballer, but then kind of when you start taking running seriously, what was the point where maybe you were when you start training with the likes of Brian Gregson and start really applying yourself to the sport? When was the moment? Maybe it was a race that you got into, a race that you done well, and where you're like, right, I want to make this a profession. Like, was it always something that was on your mind since you started running, or was it just when you start applying yourself to the sport?
No, like in fairness, when I kind of made the European Junior Champs, like I said, I would have been watching these guys on Flow Track,
Yeah.
and I would have been there was another guy called German Fernandez. Now his career obviously didn't take the same trajectory as Ryan's did, but like German was an absolute freak he would have been a year older than me, and he was running all the American high school records over a mile and 2 mile.
Yeah.
And then I would have just been seeing all these guys at major championships and just been like, that's what I want to do. I just thought it was amazing to be able to kind of make that as your livelihood. And to be honest, I wasn't really until I went to Australia that my mindset really, really changed, because I feel like in Ireland, we love sport in Ireland,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but we nearly kind of love it as fans. And when you say to somebody, I feel like here that, if someone asks you what you do for your profession, you tell someone, you're a professional runner or you're a professional footballer or something, they just laugh at you because they don't think it's a real job.
Yeah,
Do you
I know
know
what you mean.
Whereas down in Australia, man, that's just a given. Like it's just a culture down there that people come out of school all the time and try and make it as a professional runner or
Yeah.
professional swimmer or hockey player, AFL, and it's put in the same esteem as doing anything else, any other profession. And whereas over here, I think we still have a big kind of hobby culture for our sports, and
Definitely.
that comes with funding that's pumped into all other sports that aren't as recognised as the household names.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, something that we got to get better as a culture if we really want to establish ourselves as a sporting nation going forward.
Definitely. 100%, because obviously with sport, especially at a young age, it is obviously about having fun and whatnot, but then there comes a point where you need to be getting more kids and athletes within Ireland into the professional sports scene if we do want to end up representing the country on bigger stages, because you see even in the Olympics and stuff, kind of in Kenya or Uganda and some of the African countries where, like you said, over in Australia it's nearly a given that people will try to be a professional athlete. So there's more opportunity to, out with a bunch, pick out someone that will really represent your country on the highest stage, and that needs to really be nearly drilled into some students and some athletes over here that it is possible and it is a profession that you can actually pick up on, just the same way you can be a teacher or a doctor. And then we'd probably end up going further in sports across the world. And then kind of in terms of your first obviously not professional race, but the first time you picked up an Irish vest where things kind of start getting, real and really good as well for your career. When was that, picking up your first Irish vest?
So that would have been the European Junior Champs in 2009. It was held in Serbia. So I ran the standard in Irishtown when I was. So I would have, in 2009 in May, I would have ran I think I ran 350, but my PB before that I think was 356. So it took a huge chunk of time off, and I qualified, and that was so exciting to make your first international. But it was funny because I went there, and then I subsequently went on to run 346 before the Europeans. So I would have been hoping to make a final. Now I was the year out. I was a year, so I still had a year junior left.
Yeah.
So there's guys. David Bustos ended up winning the 1500. And I think he had ran 339, 340. So the standard was pretty high. But in my heat, actually, we were running around. I remember getting there, and it was just a surreal experience, because any race before that, the furthest I would have traveled for a race, maybe a BMC in Manchester. So I'm in Serbia, racing in about 35 degrees heat at night time in a big stadium, and there was a big crowd there. It was really exciting, and unfortunately the race didn't go that well. I ended up it was just a bizarre situation. With 500 to go, there was a bit of a schmozzle in the 1500, which is a big learning curve, and something I've seen many times after that. The Europeans, the 1500 meters, man, it's a dogfight. It's absolute. It's a great race to watch. Especially at a championship race, but to be in it it's nothing like running on the circuit. The circuit's just getting in behind a pacemaker and running as hard as you can. Championship 1500 meter running is just insane. So there was all this fighting going on and pushing going on, and then Henrik Ingebrigtsen, who's Jakob's oldest brother, eldest brother, he was in my race, and I think he hit the deck, and then a guy immediately behind him jumped him, and then I went to jump Henrik, but Henrik was getting up as I
Oh,
jumped him,
Jesus.
and just as I jumped, I got a push on the back, and then I just absolutely scattered the ground, and then I woke up. I didn't know where I was, and then I finished the race, but didn't get. I still to this day feel like we should have put in a better appeal, because the way things are going at the moment, if it was today, I'd 100% be true.
Oh,
But back
100%.
then, back then, it was literally you're on your own,
Yeah, I know what you
So
mean.
yeah, listen, it was a crazy experience, but yeah, that was my first experience in a like a proper as I would say, proper kind of like championships. I would have ran some Celtic Games and stuff like that,
Yeah.
some schools internationals and stuff like that. But like that was my first kind of, I feel like the first proper event that I made.
Definitely. And you know, kind of where was your mindset after that race? Because obviously, you know, being your first international race, you know, people come out with that. If they didn't do so well, they'd be like, oh, you know, look, it was my first big international race. I'll take it as the experience and we'll move on to the next one. But maybe the fact that you were in a good position and you just got unlucky to get tripped over, you know, where was your head after that? Was it like, were you down? Obviously, were you upset about it, or were you like, right?
Oh yeah, listen, I was pissed off. I think I ripped my singlet off and tried to batter some French guy in the car room afterwards. That's a fact. I think there's a picture of me losing my mind. But I remember having a conversation with Rob afterwards, going, "Listen, man, I need to rectify this. So the
Yeah.
only thing you can do is just lick your wounds and go back and train better." And I said to him, I want to be the first Europeans. I want to be first European at World Juniors home next year. That was the plan. Now it didn't work out. I was third European, but I ended up coming ninth and having a really good run.
Yeah.
But yeah, just stuff like that. It was just yeah, fuel for the fire. You know, I probably only realised more in. Obviously, I would have never really thought about it back then, but obviously they're good attributes to have. But I would have found over time one thing, obviously that's kind of pretty apparent to myself, is that I'm pretty resilient. No matter how things kind of go, how bad things are, how deflated you can get, you can always come back from a bad situation. You know,
Definitely,
so it might take a little bit of time, but if you keep your head down and keep working, you can definitely get back. You know.
And we definitely did see that, you know, 5 years later, from 2009 to 2014, in your first European Champs for Ireland in Zurich, coming fourth in the final, was, you know, obviously being 5 years later, you know, you forget about races, you mature as an athlete and you're proven as an athlete, but then, you know, come back into, you know, probably, would you say this could have been your next biggest, you know, international race between 2009 and 2014?
Yeah, well, in 2012 I made the European Senior Championships, so back before I think 2012, the Europeans was every 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was nearly like an Olympic cycle, and then in 2012 it was the first year that they decided to do the Europeans every 2 years.
Yeah.
So they had it on the same year as the Olympics. Now that always tends to be a little bit nearly of a weaker year, especially if it's before the Olympics,
The
you know,
Olympics,
because
yeah.
people, the guys who are concentrating on the Olympics probably really won't go. So I decided that obviously I qualified and I went over and I got knocked out in the heat. I ran a terrible race. And again, you know, it's just one of these things that you just got to keep going. You know,
Definitely.
you learn your lesson. I got knocked out in the European under-23 heat as well. And then that was in 2011 in Ostrava. So I kind of had 2 years where the major championships I'd got knocked out of, and then obviously in 2012 I ran a B standard for the Olympics, but obviously it wasn't good enough to go because Kieran Leonard had ran an A standard, which meant I couldn't go on the B standard. So there was a lot of disappointment for maybe 2 years. But then, yeah, and then obviously in 2013, sorry, I was ranked really high up in the European under-23s. And I came fourth in the European under-23s as well. And I remember just coming into home straight, and I got pipped by two guys coming up to, or one guy, a Spanish guy coming up the home straight, and then we went to the European Cross under-23 Championships, and I had a really good run that year. Came ninth. Individually, it was a very good run, but we came fourth again as a team. So I had two fourths, and then going into 2013 on the track, there was I went to the World Senior Championships, and again knocked out in the heat, man. And I still, like, at that time I'd ran 145 and 335 under 23, so I really kind of broken onto the scene, and I was kind of starting to win some good races on the circuit. And I was thinking next year at Europeans, like, I gotta make the final, at least. It has to be a final, you know.
Yeah.
And thankfully training just went really well. I didn't get injured, no setbacks. Kind of didn't really race that much that year. Kind of was smart in what I raced and stuff like that, and really just tried to turn up in Zurich. And like, for me, I was ranked 18th actually going in there, but I knew on times didn't really matter, considering I knew I was able to kind of run 145 at least.
Yeah.
145, if not 144 at that stage, the way training was going. And then got there and just had a really good heat, and then obviously fell a little bit short of the medals, but it was an amazing run for me to get up for fourth. So like, going forward, that was huge for me.
Definitely. So kind of coming fourth is that fourth position kind of haunts you at night, I'd say. After,
yeah.
After the
Listen, it's bittersweet, but it was an
Definitely.
amazing race to watch. It was I don't know if you ever seen that race, but it was absolute carnage. Kieran O'Linner took a fall. Charlie Grice took a fall.
Oh yes, yeah.
Two other guys got wiped out at the bell,
Yeah.
and then Benabad just had one of the most ridiculous finishes I've ever seen. He absolutely took the piss out of us. It was ridiculous. He ran 24 seconds from 400 to 200, and then just started waving at the crowd for about 150 meters. So still don't know how he did that, but it was outrageous.
Definitely. So hopefully, then obviously you kind of, recently enough, coming into recent times, when the European Championships indoor this year, that was this year. Kind of, the whole lead up of that, I remember watching the micro meets in Abbottstown in the indoors. It was kind of the return of athletics, nearly, I'd say. Obviously, because it was the Olympic year, they kind of wanted to get some athletes, a few races under the belt. So in terms of the 2021 European Championships, do you feel like going into that you were obviously a better athlete overall? Were you fit? Were you fresh? Were you feeling good? And compared to the other times, in Zurich, on the European stage, how were you feeling?
Yeah, no, I felt, to be honest, like, I felt that's one of the best championships I've ever went to, just mentally and physically. I was pretty good. Like, after Zurich, I got a really bad injury where I had osteoarthritis in my big toe joint. Which led to a whole kind of spark of problems that just kind of sparked off my kind of nightmare of injuries, which I've had kind of over pretty much for a 5-year period, from 2015 up until 2020. There was kind of stop starts, and there was glimmers of kind of getting back and stuff like that. But never really was able to kind of get back to the level I was at before. And to be honest, with Killian, like, there was times during that 5 years where I would have, if someone had said to me, you're going to get back and you're going to make a European final of the caliber that was in Turin, I would have seriously doubted you, because there was times there where I literally couldn't run. I'd go 6-month periods without being able to do anything, just with the injury nightmares that I had. So it was absolutely huge for me to get back. And I think I kind of, during COVID, it was a great opportunity for me just to kind of be able to kind of reset, where I had no championships to try scramble to make, because where we're at, and probably because you're not comfortably always making championships, and especially when you're getting back from injury, it can always be that kind of cart in front of you where you always try kind of rush back, and you can kind of find yourself in a hole.
I know what you mean.
So, like, in 2017, I kind of got back to running 3:38 again. But, like, to be honest, 3:38 doesn't really do much for you, unfortunately, in European level. So you always have to kind of try get back and get back to where you're at, which is literally at the moment is you got to be running 3:33, 3:32 if you want to be at that level that I was in 2014. But just during COVID, me and Brian Fay and Andrew Coskren and Sean Tobin and all the guys in the Dublin Track Club, we just worked really hard, and we kind of had a good vibe going, and we went on a training camp, or well, like in the COVID year, in the summer in 2020, when I got back to win the Irish Nationals. That was a big kind of step forward for me, because I'd literally come off no training, and I'd got about 5 or 6 months of good solid training in, and then I went on to run a couple of 338s and was in pretty good shape. And then I was able to kick on then during that indoor season, and we had a really good training camp in Portugal in January and February. And then I started running some good indoor races and was able to compete again. And I felt, sometimes when you go to these European Championships, you need to be at a certain standard. But once you're at that certain standard, it's all about how you kind of approach the race, And that's one thing I've definitely learned, that, you can go there and you can be ranked 5th, or you can be ranked 15th. It doesn't really matter. It's about who actually performs on that day. And I knew going in there, I could definitely 100% put out a 340 run in the heat. So I didn't care if it was going fast or if it was going slow. I was going to run 340, and it turned out I ran 340. I didn't get an automatic qualifying position, but I managed to get one of those automatic or fastest loser spots. And then I was into a European final, which, to be honest, I followed 1500 meter runner for the last 15 years, and that European final was absolutely stacked. You go on to have the Olympic champion in the race, Jakob, and then you have Marcin Lewandowski, Gomez. You had a couple of other Olympic finalists that didn't even make the final. Then you had the Fontes. He made an Olympic final. He was there. So the thing was absolutely loaded. And in fairness, listen, me and Andrew, I felt like we had good runs, but we didn't have great runs. We made a couple of mistakes that I felt we could. But to be honest, again, just because you're experienced doesn't mean you can't learn. And I learned. That was my first real kind of that was my first real season, to be honest, in my whole career that I had running indoors, which was crazy. And I really enjoyed it. And the one thing I learned about indoors, you nearly always have to be at the front, because you cannot pass guys on that track. So whether it's fast or it's slow, it's always better, I find, to be up the front in the mix.
100%. And then kind of being up against, as you mentioned, like the caliber in the race, how stacked it was. Obviously, you mentioned you feel like you did make a few mistakes, which even at this level in your career, you are still learning. But do you feel like after that race where you're thinking, I can't compete with these guys, I can, maybe in a few years make an Olympic final?
Yeah, well, listen, 100%. Like after that Europeans, I was thinking that there was no chance I wasn't making the Olympics. Like, I thought it was an absolute cert.
Definitely.
But again, we find that running is absolutely ruthless. It doesn't always give you what you think you deserve, or the work that you put in. So, like, there was no question that I thought I was going to be able to compete again. I was 100% sure that I was going to run a PB again. And then, I just got unlucky just with what happened. I kind of, like, during COVID, I peeled back all my training, made sure I wasn't going to get injured. Even after the European indoors, I decided to only do 2 sessions a week, not really push the body. But to be honest, maybe because I'd missed so many years of that, to be a good 1500 meter runner, you just have to be nearly hardened. You nearly have to have a season of races behind you.
Yeah.
Because the actual event is so tough that it takes a big toll on your body. And I probably just hadn't had that hardened conditioning of running 1500 meters after 1500 meters and being able to bounce from season to season. And then just going into and unfortunately for me, listen, it was luckily that COVID happened for me from my career, because I definitely wasn't going to the Olympics in 2020. 100% wasn't going. I wasn't in shape. And then obviously you get that little glimmer of hope that you're going to, that you might make it. And then but it meant there was no qualifying period for me. I didn't have enough points from the previous years. And then obviously going into it, I only had about a month or a 5-week window from May to the end of June. So it was very, very, very tight,
Yeah.
And the way the points worked, I knew it was going to be very difficult for me to go on points.
Definitely.
So I pretty much knew I had to run 334. So I was training very good. I was in great shape, and then I just about 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from my first race, I just got this niggle, and I tried to kind of take a bit of time off, but then you obviously can't take too much time off because
Yeah.
you don't get unfit. So you're trying to do your best, you're trying to manage it, and then just the first race, I was warming up in Ostrava, and I just felt my Achilles go in the warm up, and then I just was like, okay, what's the plan here now? So I went down to see Jared Hartman and spent a bit of time down with him in Limerick, and I got it to a reasonable. Felt fairly confident that I was going to be able to race, and then it's just a different ball game between racing and training. You know, in training you're never really going 100% ever,
Yeah.
but in a race you're going full tank, and it just didn't hold up. It was one of these things where I went to so I can't remember now, some race in Spain, and my Achilles just was in bits, and I wasn't able to walk then the next day after that, and it was it was the harsh reality that the dream was over. But it was a difficult pill to swallow. But again, listen, I feel like I've been in worse places throughout my career where there was points I literally never thought I was going to be able to compete at that level again. So for me, I kind of took a lot from making the Europeans and being able to compete with these guys again, and feeling like you're able to run a PB again. And with the 1500, you can, like Marcus O'Sullivan ran 3:33 when he was 34.
Yeah.
So it's a that's why the event is very competitive, because you have guys who are 20 like Jakob absolutely killing it, and then you still have guys like Marcin Lewandowski who's still running a sub 350 mile when
Definitely.
he's 34. So it's such a you can come at it from both ends, and it's an event that you can definitely still run when you're a bit older.
100%. It kind of just going back to the injuries themselves.
Sorry, Killy, I know we're live there, but I literally just need to close this door. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
No bother, man. Take your time.
This is my first time doing a live podcast, so it's
No, you're
different.
There's no problem at all.
Yeah.
So
We're good now. We're good now.
Perfect. No, I was just gonna say, like, in terms of the injuries, whether it was the ones that lasted for a really long time, or like, maybe one that the niggle you picked up with a 5-week period to get races in, before the Olympics, and then eventually you weren't able to get maybe enough ranking points or score, a fast enough time to get to the Olympics. What has kept you in the sport after picking up all these niggles for so long and missing out on, maybe really big opportunities like the Olympics this year? What has kept you in the sport? Like, what's been in your head saying, right, you know what, I'm gonna get through this injury again and get back fit? What's kept you to do that so many times?
I don't know, man. Like, to be honest with you, I think it's just resilience. Like I said before, I just know I'm pretty good at running, so I know whether it's 6 months or if I get a year. Obviously, the more time you get, the better you can be. But I know, listen, it doesn't take that much time for me to get back in good shape. So I think it's obviously a little bit easier when you kind of get your head around that, where I know, listen, if I'm able to start training tomorrow, let's just say, like, proper actual 1500 meter training,
Yeah.
I'll be pretty competitive in the indoors. Like, so for me, that's only around the corner. But yeah, listen, don't get me wrong. There's times where you're absolutely deflated, but listen, I think it's just an addiction. You're addicted. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter whether I hate running or whether I love running. Like, I'm just addicted. Like when I finished and I knew this season I wasn't going to be able to go to the Olympics, I was like, there's no chance I'm watching any of that. Listen, I knew I was probably going to watch Andy run, because I spent a lot of time with him, or some of the other guys on the Irish team. I would have followed, my friends and stuff like that. But I was like, nah, there's no way I'm going to be watching this whole Olympics. And once the Olympics started, I think I watched every single race, just because I was absolutely addicted, and it was brilliant. It was a great Olympics. In fairness, there was some unbelievable performances. So yeah, like, it's like I said before, just with just a quote I kind of took early on in my career from Steve Peters, who's a kind of pretty well-renowned sports psychologist. He's like, he doesn't care how motivated you are in the morning. Like, like, if you get up and, like, let's say for tomorrow, I'm going to be cross training. I'm not too excited to be cross training tomorrow, to be honest with you. But it doesn't really not matter how motivated I am to do it. But if you're committed, you'll get up and you'll do it. And I think that's what kind of always kind of kind of one thing I took back from Australia. Like you gotta literally, I feel like if you want to be really good in this sport, you have to view the sport as your job. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a hobby. It's literally a job. Like you can't wake up in the morning and decide, oh, you're not going to go to work if you're a postman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great thing Nick Beddoe said to me. Like you can't just decide I'm not going to turn up for a race because I'm not really feeling it.
Yeah,
Do you know?
definitely.
Yeah, if you view it as your job and your livelihood, I think that'll put you in a lot better place. You know.
100%. And kind of in terms of your injury that you had at the moment, obviously you're kind of in the same boat as me with the Achilles tendon up.
Yeah, you were just telling me that.
Yeah, where are you kind of at with that at the moment? Are you kind of starting back into slow runs? Are you nearly back into sessions? Kind of what's the whole process with that at the moment?
So obviously, like the tendinopathy, rest. Obviously, at the start, you need to rest it to get to it. Obviously, so you can walk without being pretty sore. So I literally got to the point where like I nearly couldn't walk. And I was just in bits. So I was kind of in a boot and crutches for a while. And then once I kind of get out of the boot and crutches, you start to kind of like the rehab where you're kind of doing some calf raises or some isometrics just at body weight.
Yeah.
And then obviously you progress on to doing heavier weights. And once you kind of feel it getting to a stage where you're kind of, you feel like you might be able to do some running on it, then you just kind of stand back slowly. So predominantly now I'm just still really focusing on rehab. And so just being in the gym and doing those heavy isometrics and, seated calf raises and all that sort of stuff. Then I would be doing a lot of my kind of aerobic conditioning on a cross trainer. But I'm back running, maybe, doing 1 or 2 runs a week. So, it's good. But listen, as you know, the things with Achilles, one day you think you're absolutely golden, you think you're fixed. And then the next day, that first step out of bed is absolutely demoralizing. So that's kind of, I feel like I'm not too far away just from past experience of having this injury. Like I've had it before. So I know I'm not too far away, but again, it's just such a tricky injury because you're trying to rehab it and strengthen it, but you're also trying to let it heal.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very, very tricky injury to kind of get right.
So yeah, no, definitely. I know you feel I've the exact same one at the moment, and it's definitely not nice. But hopefully you can get back, jogging or kind of start back into sessions as soon as possible. Obviously, you didn't get much. Obviously, the entire season this year was obviously there was a good few big Diamond League races, but the main focus was on the Olympics. So while the Olympics was going ahead, were you out with niggles? Were you completely injured? Were you completely unfit? Or were you trying to pick up races wherever you could?
No, I didn't run. Like I didn't run at all.
You were.
I was wrote off. Yeah.
Completely for the entire season.
Yeah, I didn't race.
Jesus.
One outdoor race. Oh, I raced it, and that's when I absolutely made bits of my Achilles. So nothing.
So absolutely.
Zero.
So, and since then, has it still been rehab and recovery, or
yeah? So that was June. So I would have took maybe a month off completely.
Yeah.
And then I was doing. I've been running now and then every kind of just following the rehab plan. So I'm back running like 35, 30 minutes here and there, and then just doing a lot of stuff still on the cross trainer and stuff like that. So I'm really still rehabbing at the moment and kind of focusing on that.
So then would you be having, obviously at the moment with injuries, I know it's kind of hard, you're looking into just even getting back into doing runs and sessions, but in terms of maybe cross country or indoor season, do you have your eyes set on anything specific? Or
from past experiences, you can't, like if I say to myself, listen, the only thing I have my eyes set on right now is being able to do some sessions. Do you know what I mean? Because if I can't do some sessions,
there's no way you're going to race.
That stuff matters. Do you know what I mean? So listen, looking at it realistically, I'm probably not going to bother with cross country at all. I'd like to see in the back of my mind, I'm hoping I'd run the nationals in the indoors. That'd be nice. I'd be happy with that. So yeah, but definitely, I think I'll definitely be back for the summer. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But back of my mind probably indoors, but literally just taking my time. Just I know from past experience you can't rush you can't rush your Achilles back. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those injuries you just got to accept it. as tough as an injury as it is, it does. It's one of these ones that just one of these days it'll just. And the same with yours, Killian. You might think there's no way back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you might think every morning you get up with those first couple of steps that this thing is, and there's no recovery. But I promise you, from speaking to a lot of people who've had it, and the likes of Genevieve Lacaze, who went to the Olympics, she was struggling with Achilles, has done her whole career at College Birmingham as well. They've all, and even Matt Ramsden, who kind of spent a bit of time with me in the summer, he's had Achilles problems, and it's just one of these injuries that just somehow they magically just go away when you keep doing the rehab and you're just out the other end of it. But they are, it is a very tough injury to have.
Definitely.
I think more so mentally more than anything, because as I said, like some days you think you're fine.
Yeah.
With it. Some days I think I'm 100%, and then I might just get a morning or two where I'm just like, oh my god, this is nearly as bad as it ever was.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's not. It's just healing. That's just the way it is. It's just stubborn.
Yeah, definitely.
Bit like myself, Killian. Yeah,
100%. It is a very, very stubborn, very, very stubborn injury, and we kind of, we'll come away from the injuries for a minute and kind of go back to maybe the good old track days, back in 2020. In the 1500-meter final, the iconic dive at the line, with Sean Tobin. You kind of, I had Sean on the podcast who came out on maybe the worst end of that race. You came away with the win, obviously, again with that iconic dive. So do you kind of want to just talk us through that race?
Listen, that was it was a huge race. Kind of even looking back on it now, you kind of realize how big it was, because at that time, like, that was the first race back. You know, people were dying to race, and like, even for me, like, looking back now, it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, I had to move away from Kildare for 2 weeks. Just with these COVID restrictions, and it was crazy, and it was just bizarre that kind of like the two main guys that I would have thought were the real threat was like Andy and Sean, and they were two guys that you trained with the whole year, So it was mad, but we knew going in there. Listen, once we get in there, it's every man for yourself. Definitely. And you just have a good battle. And listen, Sean is absolute. He's a very talented runner, and he's really, really, really tough runner to run against. So I knew it was going to be an absolute dogfight, and I think there's no other way to describe it. It was just an absolute dogfight.
It definitely was.
It was brilliant. And to be honest with you, as I said to Sean at the time, obviously, you want to win, but
definitely.
Like, it didn't really matter, really, because it was just such an iconic race that I think people will talk. And obviously, I think it would have been obviously a lot better if there was maybe a full kind of Irish senior crowd there or whatever, that you would usually get. But the fact that it was completely empty, and it just meant everybody was watching it on TV. And I don't know, like, everyone seemed to be watching it that night, and it was just, I think it was just great. It was just a good kind of like advertisement for how good athletics can be. And
definitely,
we need to have these matchup at nationals where the best guys are running against the best guys. And that day, like, everyone was running the 1500, and it just turned out to be a really good race. I think that's kind of something we just need to kind of strive for, and just make sure that we are actually presenting it. Because that's listen, that year, the race was only won in 3:43, so it was nothing crazy. Do you know what I mean? But no one cares that was 3:43. Everyone just cared about the battle. And that's literally what athletics is. It's just two lads laying it on the line, and similar to a boxing match, something like that. Where you just had a matchup and literally two lads going toe to toe and just fighting it out, and it was great. It's surreal kind of looking back on it now, just with the empty crowd and the COVID and everything. You get there, and Sean still have a good laugh about it, but it was great.
No, I know what you mean, man, because, like, sometimes I'll be with my mates and I'll be telling them about running. They're like, man, how do you watch running? Just people running in circles around the track. And then, there's moments like that with you and Sean that need to be put out on social media, that need to be broadcasted on the telly, that maybe, you could have even one or two people just say that are watching it that have never watched running before, kind of don't really have an interest in it, and then they see this. Yeah. And they're like, well, maybe, I'll continue watching it, and then eventually they get into it and they get into running. And even if, as I said, if it's only one or two people, that's better than none. Do you know what I mean? Listen,
at the end of the day, people just love seeing a race.
That's it, yeah.
And that's why I think even looking at the Zurich Diamond League, everyone had to qualify to get there,
Yeah.
and then we still have pacemakers, and everyone's running for 30 grand, so no one cares about the pacemakers. Just let
Exactly.
people race,
Yeah.
and like we can get. Listen, how many guys do you know that go watch horses racing against each other every day, or dogs?
Yeah,
it's
true.
like it's huge industry, and
Definitely.
we have people racing,
Actual
proper
people.
emotions and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, and we can't get that out there as big
I
as
know
big
what
as
you
these
mean.
other industries. But like literally, it's probably one of the most pure sports going.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think we just need to get back to just the simplicity of just people racing each other, and I don't think you go too far wrong with that. You can't, like, there was so many good races at that Zurich Diamond League. Do you know what I mean? That just people were going across the line together. I think there was about 4 or 5 photo finishes of lads literally throwing themselves across the line. And the same with the Olympics. Like, that's why the Olympics is so good, because
Definitely.
it doesn't matter what has happened. It's like, what's going to happen on that day,
Yeah.
and everyone's talking about who's going to win. Who do you think's going to win? And it's just great.
Definitely. And as you mentioned there, kind of with the Pacers, especially in the Diamond League, and especially in the final in Zurich, when there's big money on the line, people are gonna go all out, and especially with it being most people's last race of the season, they're kind of just gonna go all out, and kind of having Pacers in there for for you racing over the course of the Diamond League circuit, it kind of does take away the racing, the race mentality within the races, because obviously the pacemaker. The pacemaker is there to do a time on the job, or a job on the time. Sorry, and people and the commentators keep mentioning the pacemaker's time. What time's he going through in? But then they're not looking at maybe the battle for third. They're not looking for the battle in second. It just takes away that racing.
100%. And then you have people who are really good championship runners who. They don't even bother really with the circuit because they know there's no point, because they just get on it and it's an absolute hoover, and a good run for them might be coming 6th or 7th.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
exactly.
Especially in the 1500. But it just takes away that purity. Like, and the best will still be good. Do you know what I mean? So
100%.
like a guy like Stewie McSwain, he's phenomenal, one of the best runners I've ever seen, and obviously lucky enough to be able to see him train and be in the same group with him and stuff like that. The guy is an absolute freak. He doesn't need a pacemaker.
No,
he's the best. He's going to be the best anyway.
Yeah, he will.
So
yeah,
he just goes flat out. Doesn't matter, and that's the purity of it. I think that's why people love watching him run. The same with Jakob, he could run 3:27 on his own, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the best guys will still be the best, but across the board, I think and for me as well. Listen, I love it, Glex, but some races people are right. It is boring watching.
Definitely.
Watching a pacemaker who either messes the race up or goes too fast or whatever. I just don't think they need to be there. Okay, listen, there's times when 100%, if we're going for a world record,
oh yeah, definitely,
there needs to be pacemakers. 100%. If we're going for a championship record.
Yeah.
But if there's prize money up for grabs and there is stuff to fight for, I don't think we need them.
No, definitely not. And I think that's also represented when, watching the Olympics this year, where you've seen some of the best races of the year and none of them had pacemakers. I think that's representative of the fact, as you mentioned, you have people like Joshua Cheptegei over the course of the year breaking world records on the track, who had pacers where there and then it's acceptable, where he's there to do a job, and
it's not really boring either, because we all know beforehand
exactly
Cheptegei's going for the world record. And
yeah.
we all know what's happening, and it's easy to watch, and we know what's going on. But like for the other stuff, it's just like
championship racing, it's not always necessary. But look, that's here and there. We kind of we'll have to see for a few more years what they'll do there, if they'll end up kind of taking out the Pacers for championship racing and kind of just keep them maybe for pure time trials for world record attempts, or kind of see what they do on that front. But before I let you go, Paul, I do have to ask you one thing. And when you sent me this message over Instagram, I was honestly surprised, because I've been following you for a good few years now, and I've honestly never heard this. And actually, you were represented in the Guinness World Book of Records, and for running a mile across the Antarctica and the North Pole. I'm not even gonna ask how that comes about, and I'm just gonna let you kind of take it away and talk about that whole situation.
So it was just a crazy, surreal experience. So met Richard Donovan, who owns the World Marathon Challenge, and then he runs these extreme marathons in Antarctica and then also the North Pole. And I remember he put on a street mile race down in Galway in 2009. And I actually ran against Betwell Bergen down the streets of Galway, down Shop Street. And we finished outside the King's Head, and it was class. I remember at the time going, this is unbelievable, you know. And I was always for, like I said, doing different ideas with athletics and trying to bring it to, you know, that audience that don't really find track, or they might find it a bit boring or whatever, you know. So when we were flying down Shop Street, there was literally lads falling out of pubs looking at us going, what is going on here? But it was a great atmosphere. It was brilliant. It was addictive, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a great crowd. And then also Richard put on a mile in 2013. There hadn't been a sub-4 ran in Connacht. And then obviously went and I ran 3:57 that day. And obviously me and Richard became kind of good mates. And Richard started kind of helping me out just with, you know, bit of funding and trying to kind of like just progress my career on, and he was always really keen for me to do well. So I was very lucky that we had this relationship, and then we kind of got chatting, me and Richard, about you know, maybe doing a mile in Antarctica. And you know, I obviously thought this was completely off the radar because we started trying to do these kind of world relay. We trying to target the world relay 4 by a mile record, and we kind of gave it a couple of attempts, and we weren't able to get it done. So then we just came up, and at that time I'd been kind of struggling with a few injuries and getting back on track on the you know, proper track races, you know.
Yeah.
So just for a bit of fun, Rich is like, hey, wait, we try to do kind of some of these extreme miles, and I was all for it, man. Like, I love it, love going on adventures, love kind of seeing the world and doing new stuff.
Yeah.
So I was completely down for it. So we just one day he rang me up and he was like, do you want to go to Antarctica to run a mile? And I was like, you serious? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, when are we going? And he was like, about 2 weeks. And I was like, right, let's go. So we went down, we set it up, and listen, it was just a phenomenal experience. And luckily enough, I was in really good shape at the time. So I ran 4:17 on the snow in this just unbelievable, picturesque kind of setting. You haven't seen the video, have you?
No, I actually haven't.
You can see it. So it's on my Instagram, but it's on YouTube as well. But the thing just went completely viral. It was just we caught it all on drone footage.
Deadly.
And, you know, Antarctica, I didn't really know what I was expecting to go down there, but man, it was just absolutely nuts. The base camp where we stayed was just in the middle of this kind of like valley, and there's just mountains either side. Like, it's landmass. It's all completely covered in snow and stuff like that. And it's absolutely freezing. But there's huge mountain ranges, and then there's like just massive, you know, it's just huge. I can't explain it. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
you know, feel like you're just so small when you're there because there's nothing around you. It's just vast. It's just a snow desert, right? And we just ran a mile straight down, just a straight mile down a patch of snow, and it was just absolutely nuts. So it turned out that, you know, no one ever had ran a mile in Antarctica before, so I obviously had the fastest one, which was the world record. So listen, it was great to do. It was something different.
100%,
I feel like you know, something I was keen to do was just do something good with 1500 meter run and try bring your ability somewhere else, and maybe do some kind of road miles or something like that. Just these extreme miles. So it's just a really fun idea, and you know, Richard's a great guy, and he has some great ideas. So it's always fun to kind of bounce these ideas off from some ideas that you think there's no chance of happening, but some way Richard's able to get them done, which you know, he's an absolute legend.
No, that is unreal, and you took the question right out of my mouth. I was about to ask, like, what was the world record? Had someone done this before and you bet them? But obviously it was never done before. So,
no, you can't get
so you had the fastest one.
You need to get on to Richard now. So we might have a bit of a monopoly on that one. We'll see what happens.
You never know. That is unreal. I'll make sure to check the video out, and I'll put a link down in the show notes for anyone else that wants to check it out. That is unreal, and definitely. So I've heard of, you know, ultra marathons, 100k races, you know, road races, you know. There was a few kind of the, you know, you saw in the Diamond League final, kind of the 500 and odd meter track out on the road. All that crazy stuff. But honestly, I've never heard anything as crazy as that. That is deadly. That is unreal.
Yeah, it's good. Listen, it could be something could be something down the line. Oh, listen, maybe they should have maybe it could be at the Winter Olympics. Who knows? A snow
Yeah,
mile.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, I might get going to that one.
yeah, you might have to. You might have to be. You might have to send in an email or a letter or something. Send them a link to your video, and we could be seeing you with an Olympic medal soon enough.
Yeah, that'd be gas, wouldn't it?
Deadly. That is unreal. Well, Paul, I do really appreciate you taking the time to come
And listen,
on the
Killian,
podcast.
listen, I just want to say, listen, well done, love what you're doing, man.
Thanks,
Such a young age to kind of to put yourself out there. It's fair play, And as I said, same with the injuries. Just keep persevering with it, man.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah.
And hopefully it takes off.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. No, I really do appreciate it, and you never know. Maybe when you get your gold medal in the Winter Olympic mile, we'll be having you back on the podcast soon enough.
Yeah, 100%, man. Maybe you might be having Joe Rogan on your podcast or something like that.
Maybe, I'll have him on mine. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, him on yours. Yeah,
maybe
100%.
maybe he ran for the bus one time a few weeks ago. We'll have him on.
Yeah. That's it.
But no, I do really appreciate you, and also everyone watching or listening at home. I do really appreciate you, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.